Week opening edition here of Notre Dame Daily, brought to you, of course, by Fan Arch. I'm Pete Mulroy. Welcome to the program. And I don't need to tell you how the final CFP reveal went for Notre Dame. Sunday at noon, the Irish, despite a 10-2 record and a 10-game win streak where they've beaten every single opponent by at least 10 points during the stretch, were the, quote, first team out, end quote, of the field of 12. Indiana, who edged Ohio State in the Big Ten title game Saturday night, you probably saw that one, that was a good game, is the top seed in the field, while OSU, SEC champ Georgia, and Big 12 champion Texas Tech complete the field of 4 first-round byes. Oregon, Ole Miss, and there you see it on the screen. Texas A&M and Oklahoma were 5 through 8, respectively, while Alabama, Miami, Tulane, and James Madison, the last two, of course, the group of 5 entries, completed the field, slotting 9th through 12th, respectively. After both BYU and Alabama, two teams whose resumes were being heavily compared to Notre Dame's the past few weeks, got absolutely pounded in their conference title games, most, including yours truly, believed Notre Dame would remain in the field. Despite dropping back a spot last week after flipping from 9th to 10th with Alabama, the Irish were in the field. Given BYU's beatdown at the hands of Texas Tech and Alabama looking flat atrocious in Saturday afternoon's SEC title game, the belief of many was that Marcus Freeman's bunch would be in the dance for a second straight season. As we know, that turned out to be an incorrect train of thought. From my perspective, there are a few layers to this, and I'm sure you all have your own thoughts as well. Maybe many align, some may not. The Irish, despite 2 losses to Miami and Texas A&M. And by the way, and this is something that I've said time and again, Notre Dame needs to be better early in the season. This is something that I think has become, undeniable and unavoidable at this point. You've got to start the season stronger. Like I said, with that Miami, Texas A&M back-to-back week 1 and 2, you split those, you go 1-1. You're not in. You're comfortably in. We're having a completely different conversation here. But despite all of that, the Irish were in the playoff picture the entire time. You open the season 0-2 and rattle off 10 in a row. Those initial rankings that came out, Notre Dame was right there this entire time. I think most agreed that if Miami had been ranked ahead of the Irish, with both having identical records weeks ago, even 2 weeks ago, that would have been understandable given the Hurricanes' head-to-head victory, that Miami would get the nod over Notre Dame. It wasn't long ago that Miami was ranked 18th in the CFP and Notre Dame 9, and even with the U jumping up to 12 on Tuesday, the general thought that would hold true. But at the last minute, the Canes vaulted ahead of Notre Dame. Look, the head-to-head edge goes to Miami, but I think most would agree, and we've said this, and I know we've had the conversations in the chat. Make the comparison, and I'll talk more about this because the CFP committee just blows your mind. Make the comparison weeks ago. Do that weeks ago. And don't give us the BYU was in between the two nonsense as a way to justify not comparing them side to side. That's bullshit. It's laughable that this committee continues to head between Miami and Notre Dame, that it didn't come up until now. It's laughable. You want to put Miami in, that's great. 10-2. Basically, identical record with Notre Dame. I don't necessarily have a problem there. And I'm sure some will. People say, well, Notre Dame was ranked ahead of Miami this entire time, and they weren't being compared head-to-head, so why make the switch now? I agree with that. I think it should have been done from jump. If you were going to do that, especially when Notre Dame was in the midst of the 10-game streak in Miami after dropping 2 of 3 in late October into early November before rattling off 4 in a row, their resumes are very comparable. The metrics are there for both of them. And then the 10-2 record and the head-to-head nod goes to Miami. So I get that part. Miami getting in should have happened. I know the committee has said they don't want to punish teams for playing in and losing a conference title. But BYU was atrocious Saturday. Sorry, you're out, Canes in. The thing I take most issue with is Notre Dame getting the boot as that first team out for Alabama. It's frustrating that the Miami comparisons didn't happen until now, and then that flip is there. But I think what is more egregious and absurd is the Alabama issue. Look, when looking at quality wins, I understand the Tide have W's over Georgia on the road, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. But I also know they looked terrible week 1 against a bad Florida State team, incredibly flat in a home loss to an Oklahoma squad that win games solely on its defense. By the way, we're going to see that again. as the Sooner offense stinks, and absolutely horrendous in Saturday's SEC title game in a rematch with Georgia. The SEC loyalists will disagree, but unfortunately, this has become par for the course. A 3-loss team, I'm sorry, regardless of how those losses happen, should not be admitted into the field of 12. Not with the talent pool this season of 2-loss teams. Texas beat Texas A&M. They're a 3-loss team. You're going to tell me they warrant more consideration? Vanderbilt, one of those 2-loss teams. Notre Dame, one of those 2-loss teams. So you want to have a 3-loss team in. This was not the year to do it. And I think many saw this coming, whether we wanted to admit it or not, last Tuesday when Alabama moved up a spot in the rankings ahead of Notre Dame, which many disagreed with. It's an absolute joke that this Alabama team, who's been a dumpster fire for the past month, which includes that loss to Oklahoma, a near loss to Auburn on the road in the Iron Bowl, but one that apparently had the CFP committee salivating, and oh, by the way, a 56-0 win over football powerhouse Eastern Illinois, that this team was put in the tournament over a Notre Dame group that's been hammering people. I understand that the Irish beat up on sub-500 teams in Stanford, Syracuse, Boston College, and Arkansas. Get it. Syracuse and Arkansas were supposed to be a hell of a lot better than they were. Syracuse, a lot of injuries, and Arkansas just fell flat outside of their good quarterback, Dalen Green. And it's also ironic that Hunter Yurachek, the CFP chair, is also the athletic director at Arkansas. I get the whole thing with Notre Dame beating up on sub-500 teams, but you're supposed to win the games that you're supposed to win. But I also know this Notre Dame team won each of the past 10 games to end the season by double figures and once again did not play an FCS opponent. Should the Irish throw maybe Eastern Illinois, Bethune-Cookman, the Holy Sisters of the Poor, and your sister's ass university on its schedule to beef up its resume? Is that what's going to change it? You want to have the join a conference conversation? We're going to hear that crap moving forward, and you can have your opinions on that as well. That's not something that's on the table right now. You want Miami over Notre Dame given their incredibly close resumes, near identical metrics, and Miami owning the on-field head-to-head? Awesome. I'm on board. Should have just done that earlier. Should have just had that done earlier. Let's move away from that. But Alabama over Notre Dame? Take a hike. And Yurachek, once again, was ridiculous. And this is a problem here with the CFP. You can't be changing damn commissioners each and every year because you get no consistency. But this guy, it's word salad after word salad. Quote, we felt like in the end, regardless of Alabama's performance yesterday, referencing the SEC title beatdown of Georgia, their body of work for those first 12 games were enough to keep them in the 9 spot. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Alabama, and I know they were beat up with injuries. Tis the season. That happens to every team. They looked outclassed yesterday at a time where they should have been auditioning against a legit national title contender, which the Georgia Bulldogs are. And as part of this ongoing lunacy, Yurachek said the committee waited for Notre Dame and Miami to be closer in the rankings, especially after the Hurricanes dropped 2 of 3 games from mid-October into early November. I referenced that a couple of moments ago. To ESPN's credit on Sunday, they actually pressed the CFP chair on this very issue, basically asking why both Notre Dame and Miami had to be ranked side by side for a head-to-head comparison to ultimately carry the most weight. That's an incredibly fair question and one that should be super easy to answer, given everything that's at stake. Not for Hunter Yurachek, though. In his, again, word salad, he basically indicated that the committee believed Notre Dame was better than BYU and should have been ranked higher than the Cougars. They also felt BYU should have been higher than Miami at the time heading into this weekend. Given the BYU ass-kicking in the Big 12 title game, the committee felt Miami should be ahead of BYU. Great, makes sense. That allegedly, and here's what baffles me, because this is a ball drop by every definition of the term. This allegedly, BYU losing and Miami now coming ahead of them, created the first time Notre Dame and Miami, 2 teams with identical records and near identical metrics, I say that for the 3rd time, were compared one-on-one. Give me a break. Folks, they think we're idiots and we're not. Again, while I don't have an issue with Miami being in the dance, as my anger is more pointed toward a 3-loss Alabama staying at 9 after getting clobbered in the SEC title game, the reasoning behind this jump from Miami and Notre Dame is also wild. Wild. There was nothing that changed between the Irish and Hurricanes that really should have impacted either's place in the field. Had Alabama won the SEC, different story. Then, hard as it would have been to swallow, given the late comp, putting Miami in over Notre Dame would have been justifiable. But for me, the logical, intelligent thing to do would have been to bounce Alabama altogether, put Miami at 9, and Notre Dame at 10. Overall, this is proof that the weekly CFP rankings release is nonsense. And Notre Dame athletic director Pete Pavak was on the freaking warpath, and he noted that shortly after the final bracket was revealed. It also shows here, looking ahead, that Notre Dame knows it's most likely going to have to go 11-1 or better to comfortably lock its place in further tournaments. 10-2 doesn't eliminate you, but you may be dealing with this headache down the road if that's your record. Got to start strong and continue to finish the way they are. They'll be just fine. I mean, we know what this group's got coming back next year. They're absolutely loaded, regardless of who goes to the next level. It's just incredibly aggravating to listen to the nonsense from the CFP and then see a pretty lousy Alabama team remain after getting destroyed in a major game. All right? I don't know how else to put it. Week 1, Notre Dame lost week 1, close game. Alabama, okay, you're a different team from when you started the season. You're going to tell me that if we're going on that theory, that train of thought, that line there, that teams can either get better or worse or pretty much stay the same throughout a season, that Alabama's gotten better than Notre Dame has throughout the season, it's nonsense. There are many who have believed that an SEC Alabama bias exists within this ongoing committee. Crap like this is what makes that sentiment hard to dismiss. And this is not me coming up here crying on behalf of Notre Dame. Because if you would have been doing this from the jump with these rankings releases weeks ago, which maybe we could just get rid of, and just come out with the rankings as we go. You got the AP, you got your coach's poll, whatever else you want to do, and then you have the final dump at the end where these are our 12, here's what's going on. Here's who's going in. Because what did the previous rankings reveals do? What did they prove? What did they show? Nothing. If you wanted to have Miami over Notre Dame, that's great. You should have had them ahead of them weeks ago. I have no problem with that. The way that they were compared Sunday is a bit ridiculous because it's that 11th hour switch that really makes no sense. And you can't tell me this is the first time that anyone in that committee hasn't compared the two. You just can't say that. It's absurd. But to have a 3-loss Alabama team, mind you, who jumped Notre Dame last week when all Notre Dame was trounce a rival, while Alabama blew a 3-score lead and nearly lost a game to a rival, you move them up a spot. Notre Dame is idle, as were many other teams, including Ole Miss and Oregon and all those other teams that didn't play for a conference championship. And Alabama loses by 3 touchdowns, and it could have been worse, and they stay pat? Give me a break. It would have been more justifiable to just say, hey, Notre Dame, you're out and put freaking Vanderbilt in over Alabama. You don't want to punish teams for losing conference championship games? That's great. I mean, you did it to BYU, and they look terrible, and I agree with it. That's a second loss where they were outclassed by the same Texas team. By the way, it looks damn good. But for Alabama, you got your ass beat, and you get rewarded for it, and it's your 3rd loss. There's no justification for it. There is no feasible, rational justification for it. At the end of all of it, many wondered what would lie ahead for the Irish, and as we now know, they've opted not to play in a bowl game this season. It looked like they were slated for the Pop-Tarts Bowl December 27th against BYU, which oddly enough, minus player opt-outs and the like, would have been a good football game probably. But the team collectively telling the NCAA, no thanks. Look, it's an incredibly deflating way to end the season, but does not in any way dismiss what the Irish did to even get to this point, reeling off 10 straight games again against all FBS competition. Is impressive regardless of the school doing it and the teams they're beating. Now, in a statement released by the program Sunday evening, Marcus Freeman's group saying, quote, as a team, and this comes from Notre Dame Athletics X page, we've decided to withdraw our name from consideration for a bowl game following the 2025 season. We appreciate all the support from our families and fans, and we're hoping to bring the 12th national title to South Bend in 2026, signed the 2025 Notre Dame football team. So Sunday, the Irish joined Kansas State and Iowa State as teams to decline invites to bowl games, though KSU and ISU received massive fines from the Big 12 for the skip. For Freeman and company, the focus is now obviously on the 26-27 campaign, where the Golden Domers are going to undoubtedly be among the favorites to win the whole thing. A somber ending to this one, a very entertaining campaign. Sure, you sort of go back to weeks 1 and 2. Week 2, I think, in particular, the jumbled snap on the game-tying extra point, the no call late on that final A&M drive where you had more than a couple of should-have-been holding penalties on A&M, but that different team after they cleaned up some of their messes from week 1 and 2. You reel off 10 straight. That's impressive no matter who you're doing it against. And again, there was a lot that went into this over the weekend with the CFP reveal. It is frustrating to hear and to try to be convinced that this was the first time Miami and Notre Dame were compared side by side. I think that's nonsense. I think it's BS. And I think you all agree with it. Though I don't obviously have the problem. Head-to-head should matter, and it does. Even if it's week 1, Miami on the field beat Notre Dame in. Alabama should not be in this tournament. And to not even pay a price for getting the you-know-what kicked out of you in your conference championship game, where you basically should have been just showing the committee, hey, even if we don't win this game, we can go toe-to-toe with one of the best, and Georgia is in the country. Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in over us, a Alabama team that maybe even with a third loss, had they looked good, would have been more justifiable. But I'm not keen on the 3-loss team anyway. The fact that Alabama looks so bad at the worst possible time to put them in over a team like Notre Dame is an absolute travesty. For now, have a great rest of your Monday. I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll still have a lot to unpack as it goes. As we move along during the upcoming postseason, I'll keep you up to speed on all things Irish football, and we'll keep tabs on what's happening nationally. You can't ignore it, right? It still is fun. I'll see you all tomorrow, and as always, go Irish.